Uh, I have to kind of these days limit myself with two young children. I have to limit myself to the amount of time and the amount of money I can spend on activities. So my wife allows me to have one expensive hobby, and fly fishing is my one.
There you go. Yeah, that can add up.
Yeah,
I can
skiing,
have,
golf,
I can have fly
those are
fishing.
expensive too.
I can have fly fishing. I can have other hobbies, and I can be happily married. But I can only have two of the three.
Yeah. But you know, that goes along with what you said. You want to settle someplace where you can do what you love to do. You know, you don't want to compromise too much.
100%. And you know what? I have found a lot of joy in teaching my kids how to fish, spending time up in the mountains, and you know what? I even like being married to my wife. We've been married for a little while, so I'd like to maintain
That's important.
that.
That's most important.
Hey, we got that on a tape recording. If
Yeah, I just started recording the meeting, Ryan. So you're all you'll have evidence of that.
I really feel close to you guys. The blackmail has already started. I thank you. You know, I feel like I'm part of the family here.
Good. All right, let's get started here. So welcome to our March 2022 Canandaigua Lake TU meeting. I think we got an exciting program tonight. Our guest speaker's on, so let's, without further ado, get started here. Go through our usual agenda here. There we go. So at our what we do is we do a pledge of allegiance, welcome any new folks, go through some fishing reports and photos, and some other general volunteer updates. Al will give us updates on our conservation programs, and we'll talk a little bit about our membership survey and also our intro to fly fishing school coming up in May. And then also there's a fly fishing film tour going to be occurring in Rochester in April, so we'll give you some details about that. And then we'll get to our guest speaker, Dr. Keith Tidball, talking about some of the TU service partnerships and some of the other programs that we're involved with here. Okay, so let's remove our hats here and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I wanted to honor those brave men and women in the Ukraine who are just going, I mean, I can't believe in the 21st century we're seeing things like we do every night here, but let's just hope that this stuff ends like sooner than later. It's just awful to watch, but join me now as I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic
for which it stands, one nation under God,
indivisible,
with
liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all.
Thank you very much. So we got some fish pictures finally. I've been bugging the snowbirds to send me something, and Mike Lindsay emailed me the other day there, and so he's down. He fishes in Pine Island Sound on the Gulf Coast near Naples, Sanibel Island area there. So we got a nice bluefish here on the top left. I think that one in the bottom right is a Spanish mackerel. He didn't identify the species, but it looks like a mackerel to me. Big bluefish. I used to catch those in Long Island and Cape Cod, so they travel. And here's Mike's buddy with a what I believe is a speckled trout, which is we call weak fish in the Northeast, but speckled trout's a nicer sounding name. Beautiful spotted fish. And then just to rub it in there, he sent this picture of his boat moored out in a beautiful day there. So looks like a great time there. And then in our neck of the woods, though, they were starting to get snow and ice melt now, and just got these photos from Scott and Tyler the other day. Some tributary action, nice steelhead on the left there. Looks like he caught it on a bead. And then Scott sent this one, a big brown trout. Looks like a purple and black kind of woolly bugger he got there. So I would expect this action will probably actually this month. We're getting some warmer weather coming this week. It's supposed to be in the 60s on Thursday. And as long as the streams don't get blown out, you know, you could really have some hot action in these tribs next month or so. Just beautiful fish. So that's our photo galleries. Then some just real quick things. If you're new to our meeting, don't be shy. Chime in and introduce yourself. You can also use the chat feature. If you have any questions, type them in the chat and I'll pick them up as we go through the meeting. This is where we are with our chapter membership. We're at 236. We have 343 Facebook members of our Facebook group. And if you use Facebook, it's a great place to share photos. That's where I got a lot of these off of. We also put our newsletter on there, and then the meeting that we're recording, we will, once we save that recording, we put it on YouTube, and you can play it back at your leisure, or people that can't make the meeting tonight can always watch it later. That's worked out really well. This is on the right here is a picture of our YouTube channel, and some of our meetings, we've gotten some pretty big audience. The one you did, Al, in May has had 279 people view it since we presented that. And that's something, yeah. And the other video that's been watched a lot is our intro to fly fishing school. That's been watched almost 100 times, 96 views on that. So it's nice little feature here. And let's see some of the other things. Also on our new website, there's a contact us link that's working really well. And I'm getting some good feedback, people in the community reaching out to the chapter through our website. So that's working really well. If you have any questions, just use that feature. It's canandaigualaketU.org is our, and also we have a donate link. It's kind of like church here. I got to pass the plate at least once during the meeting here. So, but to actually, in serious, to help us pay for a lot of this technology we've had to buy in the past couple of years, we kind of pass the hat on that, and that helps us with these software licenses and stuff we have to get. So that's real quick on that. There we go. So our future meetings. So this meeting tonight, I'm hoping and pretty comfortable is going to be our last Zoom only meeting. And in April 11th, our next meeting, we're planning to have that back in person live from Canandaigua at the American Legion Hall. We've got the room all booked, and the COVID numbers are looking very encouraging. I just checked that before we started the meeting. In Ontario County here, we're at 1.16% that was as of the 13th. And statewide, the positivity rate is down to 1.45. So those are healthy meetings, and they're healthy numbers there. So we're feeling pretty comfortable we can get together. And it's a big space there, so we can always spread out pretty well within there. Whatever guidelines are recommended for us, we'll communicate those as we get, when we do the April newsletter. But I'm looking forward to that, seeing everybody in person again. And the guest speaker will be our friend from Corning, Kirk Klingensmith, the Twin Tiers 5 Rivers Fly Fishing International chapter down there. Very good friends of ours and very active group. Not sure what his program is. Kirk has a bunch of different programs, but they're all good. So we'll let you know that when we do the newsletter. And then our next, that'll be the last kind of meeting we'll have in the spring, because our next couple of events are all going to be outdoors. In May, we have our intro to fly fishing school at Ononda Park. Finally, after this is our third attempt at this, we had to cancel it. And I don't think we've held it actually since I've been president. We've been meaning to, but one thing or after another, and COVID got in the way. But we're finally going to do it on Saturday, May 14th. So if you know someone who wants to learn how to fly fish, they can be a student, and if you as a member want to come in and volunteer and help out with casting and so forth, mark that date down. And then in June, we'll have another Saturday event on the Cohocton River. We're going to revive our One Fly Challenge, and then we'll also have our kind of beginning of summer picnic down there, and they'll be at the what we call the special regs parking lot on the Avoca back road. I believe that's on. It's off the main highway near between Wallace and Avoca. Real pretty spot, and it's kind of away from the main road. So that's where we're going to base ourselves there. And there's a great big public fishing access parking lot there. So real good spot, real pretty spot too. And then in July, we'll do our second annual warm water event, our bass and panfish invitational at Boughton Park in East Bloomfield. We've got permission again from the Parks Commission to hold that event. So that was a lot of fun last year, and we're looking forward to that again. Looking forward to the warm weather again too. Okay, I'll zip along here with my volunteers. I want to actually on this page just thank everyone who has recently stepped up to help volunteer. I mentioned we're looking for people to be volunteers, instructors, and facilitators on our fly fishing school. So just shoot me an email at info@canandaigualakegu.org if you want to volunteer for that. I want to thank Jim Canton and John Chaldone for stepping up and volunteering to help with our MailChimp newsletter system. That's actually our database where we not only do the newsletter, we did the survey recently. And one issue we had with it is we had the license we only had one user seat, which was me. And you always have to have backup, especially with these tech things. So now we have 3 of us that have are authorized users of that system. So that actually is a big weight off of me to get some extra help on that. And also I wanted to thank John for doing our website. He keeps it up to date every month. And Scott Feltrinelli, who's our Facebook admin. So anyway, thank everyone who's recently volunteered, and also Ralph, I want to recognize, and Al will probably speak to that in a little bit, for helping out in our conservation area. Okay, and speaking of Al, you're on deck now. And
Okay, well, first thing I just want to mention, I made those reservations at Ananda Park over a year ago. We had to cancel a couple of times due to COVID, so I just double checked to make sure they have not forgot us, and we were still on the schedule. And so they said we're good to go. But one thing I found out is there's a car show at Ananda Park on the same day. So one of the things we'll have to tell our participants is they'll have to park across the road and then walk over to the park. But the park says they can accommodate both of us. So I guess we ought to just charge on. But I just did double check to make sure we were still on the schedule down there.
oh, okay, thanks.
The other main thing I want to talk about is we have not been able to help with the stocking down the Cochin River the last 2 years, again because of COVID. They didn't want volunteers working close to the DEC people. They were concerned if their DEC people got sick, then they wouldn't be able to distribute the trout. So we have not been able to work with them the last 2 years, but we're going to be able to work with them this spring. We have the first stocking set up for 24 March, and I've got enough volunteers lined up to do that. And we're going to be putting in about 3,300 rainbow trout and 360 brown trout on that particular day. And the big got a big change in how we're stocking. In the past, we always had 2 days of stocking back to back, and we would go about a third of the way the first day and 2/3 the second day. But now they want to change it and go all the way from Atlanta to Kenona in 1 day. So we're all set up to do it. We're just going to have to see how it works out and see if we need to make any adjustments. If any of my volunteers are listening in, I'm counting on you being there. So we'll see you on the 24th. The next two stocking sessions, one's going to be on 8 April, and the other one's going to be on 20 April. So I'll be putting out a request for volunteers for those 2 dates. I'll probably get that out sometime this week. So it's real good. We're going to be able to help stock and spread the trout out a little bit. You know, if we don't help stock them, they just dump them off the bridges. And then the hatchery truck followers come along and pull them all out. So it's real good that we're going to be able to spread them out a little bit. That gives us a much better fly fishing season, but it also a lot more trout survive. So we get more natural reproduction in the river. We do have some good natural reproduction, but it gets a lot better when you can spread the trout out so they survive a little better. So that's all I was going to talk about tonight.
Okay. That's those numbers you said it was 3,300 rainbows and.
Yeah. So for the this coming one, 24 March, we're doing about 3,300 rainbows and 360 browns. Let me look at the other list. And it's pretty close to the same. All three of the stockings I mentioned. That's quite a change. We used to get all browns in our stocking, but
Yeah.
and it's got to do with some issues they're having at some of their hatcheries and where we're going to be getting the trout from this year. So we're actually going heavy on rainbows this year.
That's a really interesting news and good news. They seem to have thrived since they started stocking them there. I've caught a few of them and I've seen other people shared photos with them. One, a real healthy one, looks like it was a holdover, you know, it was like a 2-year-old. So that's something to look forward to.
Yeah, that's good. I think it's good to have the mix, and then, you know, we also got our native brookies, which are the ones we want to preserve the most, but it's good to get a variety in there.
Yeah, great. All right, well, thanks, Al. Okay. Come on, Sticky there. Okay, just a quick reminder. We're getting some good response here. We have a membership survey we created that's connected to our newsletter, and it's in. We'll keep this open probably for another month or so, and we're getting some pretty good responses and some good feedback. So to help us improve how we run our programs, and this is a chance to kind of tell us, you know, things you'd like to do. Please go on to the survey and complete it for. It's real quick. It's only 24 questions, and it's, you know, mostly just kind of clicking yes and no's on it. So we'd appreciate the feedback, because these are just some of the comments we've got already. So which I think are really good. I like the one from the snowbird there. So he enjoys having the Zoom meetings in the winter, and that'll be something, you know, that one benefit of the past few years is learning how to do this, that having these remote meetings on Zoom has been really appreciated by people who are out of the area and maybe for the winter or whatever. So like I said, the link is in the on the newsletter, and you just click that and it'll take you right to it. And then our Intro to Fly Fishing School, the registration for that is now open. We're using a system that TU provides for us called My Event Center. And there's a link to that also in the March, the latest one I sent out, the reminder email. And that'll take you there, and you buy the tickets for it. The tickets are no charge. The school is no charge, but this is a way that we kind of control the registration and limit the attendance. When we were talking about this in January, you know, COVID was still pretty hot, so we were going to have limited attendance, and also it's the first time we've done the school in about 5 or 6 years, so we're just kind of getting our feet back into it. But there'll be no charge for it this year. It's designed for people who are beginners or pretty new to fly fishing. No previous knowledge is required. That's really the point of it. We want to get people involved in the sport and learn, kind of get them hooked on this sport that we all love so much. And one of the things we want to do is after kind of about half an hour or so introduction to the equipment, we'll want to get people outside and get them casting. We got a pretty big yard area at the park there, assuming they're not parking cars there. But
Yeah, I told them we wanted to use that field, but we'll have to see how, we may be casting at cars or something.
okay, that'll be our target there.
So let me just mention that I did send our information into the Penny Saver, and I just got, they have to, you send it in and they've got to approve it, and then they put it in some future issues. So I got a note today saying they approved what we want to say, and they're gonna put it in some future issues. I also sent it into the Daily Messenger. But I haven't seen it in the paper yet. We'll have to keep our eyes on the paper.
Okay. Oh, thanks for doing that then. We also are going to hold the class, just the classroom part of it in April. Let's see, it's the 14th at the Victor Farmington Library. They contacted us through our website, wondering if we'd be interested in doing, they have all sorts of classes they do in the meeting rooms at the library there. And they have their own mailing list they promote their programs through. So we've got that all set up. So that'll give us a chance in April to kind of do a practice run of what we want to do in May with the bigger class there. So we're getting some traction on this here. And
Gordon, concerning the fly fishing school and the car show, I'm also involved in the car show.
Okay.
Sorry, something happened to my video. I'm not getting that. I just lost the video feed here. They're planning on roughly about 100 cars.
Okay.
At least they're limiting the field to 100.
Okay.
Whether they'll actually get that or not, I don't really know. But just as a heads up.
Okay. So this is what those. Well, you do the antique English cars, right? That's your.
Yeah, that's what this is going to be. This is all going to be all English cars.
Oh, really? Oh, wow. Okay.
Yes.
That'd be good.
This is going to be I don't want to say a conclave, but it's a part of the regional Western New York State Center for MGs, Triumphs, Jaguars, Aston Martins, the big gambit. Mostly, just about all British cars, so we'll be there.
Okay. I love those old cars there. They look nice to look at. Keeping them running is another story, I know, but
I don't know how much field space. I got thinking about that when they first started this through the car club, and I said, you might the same weekend, same place, same weekend, same everything. What are they going to limit the space to? So I hope we have enough space.
Okay.
Yeah, I think they're gonna park most of the cars where usually the patrons park. So I think the cars will mainly be on pavement. And I told them we wanted to use the grassy field, and they said we were compatible. So all we can do is wait and see, I guess.
All right.
If nothing else, we can cast out into the water,
Yeah.
You can always cast out into the water.
Yeah, off that beach, actually, I'm showing here.
It won't hurt the fly lines too much.
No.
All right, great. Okay, so if you know anyone who's interested in this, like I said, you can either send them a link to the newsletter or have them email at info@canandaigua-lake-tu.org, and then we'll get them all set up there. So stay tuned for that. And then final plug here is the Seth Green TU chapter sent me a request to see if we could help them promote this. The fly fishing film tour, which is pretty popular. It goes all over the country, cities all over the US hold these tours, and they're really some good filmmaking. Usually it's a series of kind of small, kind of short films of all sorts of exotic fishing. And so Seth Green is sponsoring that here in Rochester, and it's going to be at the Little Theater in downtown Rochester. And if it's like the previous years, they pack this in good. So if you're interested in going to this,
Yeah, we did.
yeah, get your tickets sooner than later. I remember
Early, yes.
they used to hold it at the in the Pittsford Plaza Cinema there, and they would fill it. I mean, they get big response there. But this is a fun event if you've never been to it. Okay, so now we're ready for our guest speaker, Dr. Keith Tidball from Cornell University. I was looking at his resume there, and this is like just barely scratches the surface. But he works at the Department of Natural Resources at Cornell, and he's also assistant director of Cornell Cooperative Extension. And as far as TU goes, Keith is the vice president of veterans programs for our New York State Council, as well as a major in the New York National Guard. So without further ado, let me introduce, stop my share, and Keith can pick up on his. And
Okay, well, thank you very much, Gordon. I appreciate the invitation and the opportunity to be with you all. I am very impressed and appreciate how active this chapter is and how much things you've got going on, and inspired to wake my chapter up a little bit and follow in your good example. So I appreciate that. I'm going to share my screen. And basically what I'm going to do is talk with you all a little bit tonight about what the Veteran Service Partnership actually is, and how you might be able to get involved in that as more involved in that as a chapter. I know the chapter has probably been involved with the VA and with Project Healing Waters in the past, but there are now other opportunities emerging that expand the opportunities for us to be involved with cold water conservation and fly fishing among our veterans and among other service partners. So, as Gordon mentioned, I'm coming from Cornell University, from the Department of Natural Resources and Environment. I'm a social scientist by training. And a lot of the work that I do, and I'll talk a little bit about it later, has to do with how outdoor recreation, specifically hunting and fishing, can be therapeutic for those who have experienced some form of trauma, whether that's military, whether that's natural or other disaster survivors, whether that's first responders. That's sort of the bailiwick for a large portion of the work that I do. I also do a number of other sorts of things having to do with the human dimensions of natural resources management, wildlife, fisheries, and forestry. But today I'm going to talk to you a little bit more about how it is that I came to the council for this kind of work, and also some of the work I'm doing nationally. So you probably, how many have you can just show me your hands or use a little raise hand button. How many of you are familiar with Trout Unlimited's Veteran Service Partnership? I see one hand, I see a couple hands, but not everybody. So it's worth explaining a little bit what that is. That was about 10 years ago. Trout Unlimited developed its Veteran Service Partnership, which was intended to bring the opportunities around cold water conservation and fly fishing and all that we as Trout Unlimited do to veterans, especially given that we had this huge surge in veteran activity, in active duty activity in the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq. So that was a good response that Trout Unlimited had. I'm a life member of Trout Unlimited myself, so I was immediately involved in that as a donor. And then later, because it coincides with the work I've been doing, got involved at the national level. Just a couple of years ago, though, some of you may or may not be aware of this, they took the word veterans out of the Trout Unlimited Veteran Service Partnership to expand it to now include not only military veterans, but also first responders and others involved in a slightly enlarged field having to do with service to not only their country in uniform, but in uniform in other ways to our communities. So that expands our opportunities as Trout Unlimited chapters to reach out and to do more recruitment and more retention in our space. And obviously, everybody's worried about the same things in this space, whether it's hunting or fishing, and that is we're all getting older and it's hard to recruit the younger generations. So this is an important step forward, I think, in terms of recruitment and retention, our ability to recruit now beyond the military for this program. But that I have always been vocal about saying I don't want this change to dilute our focus on veterans, just augment it. So take that how you will. My focus continues to be predominantly at the state level on our veteran populations while welcoming other first responders and so forth. If you have any questions on that, just chime in anytime during the presentation. Gordon, I see you got your hand raised.
No, I was just, you asked who was involved in the program, so I was.
And your hand is still up. Okay, so it's just the software doing that. Gotcha.
There you go. Okay.
So some people might, and it's a shame I don't think Ryan got back on. I'm sure this would be of interest to him. May not be aware that the service partnership includes a lot of organizations beyond what we're mostly familiar with, being Project Healing Waters. This is the most active members of that partnership beyond Healing Waters. The Sun Valley Higher Ground is an excellent organization. They do a lot of adaptive skiing. I understand Al's into that. They do a lot of that, but they also do some excellent outdoor recreation activities to include fly fishing. I actually went on a trip to do an evaluation for them in the Sawtooth Mountains, where we went after cutthroat, and it was fantastic. It was an amazing trip, and the veterans that participated had a great time. The SVA, of course, is an organization that we're familiar with, and they are one of our partners. TAPS, Warriors and Quiet Waters Foundation, who I didn't realize were so active beyond the West, but I was just vacationing in Florida myself and fishing. And I'm sorry, Gordon, I didn't send you some of my pics because I got some good ones. But I noticed that their Warriors and Quiet Waters was active in Florida and had their own chapter down there doing things. So they're one of the partners that Trout Unlimited can work with in terms of this service partnership. But the one that I really want to share with you, because I think it's exciting, and the growth here and the opportunity for chapters, it's such a nimble organization and easy organization to work with, is this one here in the right-hand corner of your screen, Rivers of Recovery. Has anybody heard of Rivers of Recovery? Other than Gordon, because I know he's heard me talk about this a little bit before. I don't see any hands. Doesn't look like anybody has. So let me tell you a little bit about that organization. It'll let me do that. There we go. So I'm going to tell you about that organization by telling you a little bit about my lab and my research. So this is the name of my lab at Cornell. It's Wounded Warrior RX, or the Woods and Water prescription. And the key here is that RX, shorthand for prescription, is to signify that myself and a number of my colleagues are all working towards the day when doctors can actually prescribe, this is so awesome, to actually prescribe fly fishing for trauma such as post-traumatic stress, TBI, for mobility injuries, and so forth. The ability to actually prescribe that takes away one of the premier barriers, one of the primary barriers that especially veterans face when they would like to utilize outdoor recreation as therapy. That's the cost. But if it's prescribed, then insurance can pay for it, which is a big deal when you're talking about our veteran population, as well as our first responder population. So that's the name of the lab, and that's kind of I want you to see the sort of philosophy that I'm coming at this from. And this notion that outdoor recreation can be therapeutic is really gaining speed, gaining traction. There's lots of evidence out there. I'm publishing in this space. Others are publishing in peer-reviewed scientific journals about this. And this article, this quote here from Aaron Rubin, is from an Outside Magazine article, which is now a little dated. It's from 2019, but it goes further with this idea that your primary care physician or psychiatric nurse practitioner or cardiologist could prescribe being outside before a pill. And when I have surveyed hundreds of veterans now in these programs, they would much rather be outside because it makes them feel better than the pills make them feel. So that's something to consider in terms of the value and merit of our work. And the funny thing about all this is it's not a particularly new idea. I mean, ever since, these early writings about fly fishing that are all kind of our canon literature from the 1400s or from Isaac Walton in the 1600s, we, the public in fly fishing, have been in the process of being convinced that fly fishing is good for us. So no big news here. It's good for you. We know that fly fishing is good for us. That's why we do it.
Gives you a good excuse to go fishing too.
Yeah, well, and it's actually good for you. Exactly. And speaking of doctor's orders, this gentleman, Dr. Herbert Benson, who's a pretty famous doctor at Harvard, has actually written about this. He says that humankind has learned over these many centuries that we've been alive, millennia even, how to turn off stress by breaking the train of everyday thinking. And that invokes this thing that he's patented called the relaxation response. And in his work, he says there are two things that you got to have that relaxation response going. And it's number one, a passive setting. And the other thing is a repetition of either a sound, a phrase, a word, or a movement. Enter fly casting. So he says, and this quote I use often with non-believers, what better example of this than fly fishing with the repetitive back and forth motion of the rod and the fly and so on. So, we've got good backup here. We've got a Harvard trained doctor with his own center and lots of experience and publications under his belt advocating for this approach, for the prescriptive approach to fly fishing and bettering your health. So with all that going on, I've been working in my sort of lab, working with partners. I did a lot of work with an organization called Wounded Warriors in Action, not to be confused with the Wounded Warrior Project. Wounded Warriors in Action focuses entirely on hunting and fishing as therapeutic for Purple Heart recipients, combat wounded veterans. And through that work, I was introduced, actually it was at a Trout Unlimited National Train the Trainer for the Veteran Service Partnership. I was introduced to this group that I mentioned earlier, Rivers of Recovery, and have since joined their board. I'm now their science advisor, and I'm super excited about this organization and their involvement in Trout Unlimited's service partnership. So the organization is dedicated to providing rehabilitation, physically and psychologically, for injured combat veterans or any veterans. They don't limit it to just combat veterans. And they do this through innovative outdoor-based therapies and research. They also, in their mission here that I'm basically summarizing here, they strive to provide participants with therapeutic programs that result in measurable and sustainable improvement. That's really important because the VA and others are often saying, yeah, it's nice that you're talking about how veterans enjoy this stuff, but can you prove it? Can you measure it? So we're working on measuring it. And also the programs are designed to re-enable and re-energize. There's a lot of re-words there to include recovery, to re-energize participants and provide the support and self-confidence they need to maximize long-term recovery. And the website is there. Please feel free to click on that or jot that down to take a better look at their website in the future. So as an example, I want to share with you a recent council. This was a Trout Unlimited New York Council sponsored Rivers of Recovery event that I led. We did this trip with Evan Botcher and the Hungry Trout up on the Ausable, I guess they say. I grew up in Detroit, so I always get confused on which river is supposed to be pronounced which way, but it's the Ausable, I think, here. We fished up there with 3 combat wounded veterans, and I'm going to tell you a little bit about that outing. You can see that there's some pictures of these guys. One, let me just say, can you guys see my cursor moving around? Can you see it? Okay. Yep. So this gentleman right here is a full-bird colonel in the New York Guard. This gentleman here is a retired lieutenant colonel and who's now running the Sierra Club Military Outdoors program, and that was his first fishing outing. And so Sierra Club will now be welcoming more broadly fly fishing as a part of their portfolio for military outdoors. And this gentleman right here is a Special Forces combat medic from the Vietnam War era, and I think 3 tours in Vietnam.
Wow.
Interesting dude. You can see over here in the opposite corner, here he is. He had some mobility issues we were able to accommodate there's one of the guides from Hungry Trout. That right here, he's got on about a 16-inch brown in the Ausable, which I'll show you some pictures in his hands here presently. So that was the crew. And then of course, myself and Evan were, in the guide role for the week-long trip. This gentleman who I mentioned, this is Colonel Albanese. This was his first time he'd ever caught a trout, and it was the first time he'd ever been fly fishing. And that smile that's on his face right there was not wipeable. It was on his face the entire time. And in fact, I actually served with this guy. He's still smiling from this trip, and he's looking forward to the next opportunity. And now he's a member of Trout Unlimited. Again, here's Lieutenant Colonel Aaron Leonard, hooked up, having a good time, and he caught many fish there in that spot. And now we have a even stronger partnership of Trout Unlimited, that is with Sierra Club Military Outdoors, than we had prior to him being on the river with us as a group. This is the medic I mentioned. So the other thing that we did besides fish the sable there is we also went to the Twin Ponds that the Hungry Trout has special access to. For those of you that don't know about this place, this is an amazing series of ponds in the Adirondacks, right on the Adirondack border, northern border up by Titus Mountain, that just has absolute slob brook trout in there. I've fished there probably a half a dozen times, and I've never caught anything smaller. Well, for my largest fish of the outing, the largest fish is always at least 18 inches. Brook trout, we're talking brook trout here. And 20 plus inch brook trout are not uncommon. His fish there was 19 and change. When he showed up and we asked him what his goals were, like you always do when you're guiding, what are your goals for the trip? He said, I want to catch a wall hanger brook trout. And my God, look at him hold on to that thing. Not exactly the handhold that we recommend for catch and release, but he had no intentions of releasing this fish. This thing was going on his wall no matter what. So, and we were happy to oblige him in that case. An interesting thing about him, he's a graduate of the Oasis program there that those at Bristol Mountain would be familiar with, and the Agnes folks have been instrumental in pushing forward. And they were the ones, Lindsay especially was responsible for recommending this gentleman to our program. We're very glad for that, and glad to think of Oasis as a New York State partner in our Veteran Service Partnership. Let's talk a little bit about what's the research say about all this, which may be of interest to you all. I mentioned that with that group, Rivers of Recovery, that they care about measuring things. They have praised and prided themselves on placing a high priority on, demonstrable and repeatable results. And they have produced a number of peer-reviewed studies that support their therapeutic objectives. I'll share a handful of those. One of the other colleagues that worked with me for Rivers of Recovery on the science side is Dr. Gary Wynn, who's also a colonel in the Uniformed Services University Medical School. And he is the co-author of this book, Complementary and Alternative Medicine for PTSD. If you're interested in the subject, there are a couple interesting parts of chapters having to do with fly fishing and fly tying and rod making and a few other things that are of interest to our group. So let me just run you quickly through, and we're not going to read through all these slides and get my eyes glaze over because it's getting to be brown water time already here. But just to hit the wave tops, this Craig and colleagues paper was published in the Journal of Therapeutic Recreation, and it's called The Transformative Nature of Fly Fishing for Veterans and Military Personnel with Post-Traumatic Stress Disorder. This was a Rivers of Recovery paper. This was based on observing and participating in a Rivers of Recovery program. And, it basically talked about how fly fishing can serve as a coping resource and how it helps move veterans and military folks towards personal transformation and post-traumatic growth, instead of always focusing on post-traumatic stress or post-traumatic disorders, which is something we in the military community would like to get rid of as a moniker. Another study, a peer-reviewed journal article from the journal called Community Mental Health Journal is titled Outcomes of a Therapeutic Fly Fishing Program for Veterans with Combat-Related Disabilities. A number of other authors on that one. And again, that was 40 veterans participating in 4-day therapeutic fly fishing programs. That was Rivers of Recovery. And the research that we conducted there was pre-test, post-test, and a 3-month follow-up, and the results indicated that there were significant decreases in PTS symptoms, post-traumatic stress, significant decreases in depression, in perceived stress, decreases in functional impairment, and importantly, an increase in leisure satisfaction based on those pre-tests and earlier testing. So once again, that second now peer-reviewed journal article in a scientific journal indicating the success of these programs.
I saw that Ryan has his hand up. Do you have a
All
question?
right, I'm not
Ryan?
able to see that. Go ahead, Ryan.
Seen all this research, and it's pretty amazing what fly fishing does as far as for recovery. Has anybody, and do you know of any research that has done it as using fly fishing or other activities like it as a protective measure? Obviously, having these access to coping mechanisms lowers our stress level after something traumatic has happened. Or is there anything that people have done to look at if people have these protective measures, whether they're able to cope with crises better?
There is some work,
As in they had this coping mechanism before that trauma happened.
Yeah, there is some work. I appreciate the question. There is some work that is happening now, a couple of grants that I'm on that are looking at outdoor recreation therapy to include fly fishing as suicidation or suicidology protective factors. There's a whole literature on risk factors in suicide, not enough on protective factors. And so you're hitting it right on the head. All of us are those of us that are involved in that project are looking at, if this can be, and I think you missed the beginning where I was talking about the RX in the name of my lab having to do with prescription and the ability for doctors to prescribe outdoor recreation as therapeutic. But if we're able to do that, then there must be a prophylactic opportunity here. And so that is, I don't think there's anything written on that as of yet, but that is under study right now under at least 2 grants, one of which I'm a part of. Excellent question. And if there's follow-up on that question or others like that, we can chat about that more at the end. I'm happy to discuss that further. I just want to, yeah, Roger that. We can do that. Or after this too. I'm just going to give you a couple more examples of these peer-reviewed journal articles here. And if anybody wants to have a look at these at any point, just let me know and I can send you the URL or the web link where you can go have a look. This one from the journal called Military Medicine, titled Participation in Outdoor Recreation Program Predicts Improved Psychosocial Well-Being Among Veterans with Post-Traumatic Stress, pilot study. The results of this that are reported in here is that the acute effects observed for improvements in attentiveness and positive mood states, and adding that to significant and sustained reductions in negative mood states, anxiety, depression, and so forth, were notable. And the comparison between baseline and then follow-up periods showed significant improvements in sleep quality and reductions in perceived stress and PTS symptoms. So another example of the positive benefits, the positive therapeutic benefits of fly fishing and fly fishing group outings as therapeutic. One more, this one called War Narratives. This is more of a qualitative thing, not so quantitative. This was also published in Therapeutic Recreation Journal, having to do with the sort of external intangibles, if you will. The necessity of camaraderie and how these outings bring that in, how reflection, and there was an interesting, double entendre there maybe, given that we're in water environments, in reconciling memory, benefits of outdoor recreation therapy as active participation. And there also was, and this is just sort of an aside, this is not published in a journal per se. This was a paper that was presented at a conference that I attended by Dr. Vela. This had to do with cortisol, which I thought was really interesting. Cortisol being that sort of stuff we produce when we're experiencing a lot of stress. And she was measuring cortisol rates pre and post, and the Rivers of Recovery, and it says right down there in the discussion in the right-hand corner, the Rivers of Recovery programs showed significant reductions in daily cortisol production because people were relaxing and experiencing the therapeutic benefits of fly fishing. And what's interesting to me about all of this is, yes, we're talking about Veterans Service Partnership or the Service Partnership and the therapeutic aspects of fly fishing, but who hasn't been traumatized by either our national politics right now or COVID or anything else? I mean, these therapeutic things apply to every one of us, whether we've put on a uniform or not. And I don't want to ever lose sight of that. So we know this as fly anglers ourselves, and we know that we want to pass that on in any way that we can. But a question that comes to me and that I'm pursuing in my academic life is, it's great what we're recording, but why fly fishing? I mean, there's all kinds of other modalities, and Lieutenant Colonel retired Leonard, who I mentioned earlier, is working in hiking and other sort of outdoor recreation modalities with the Sierra Club. What's special about fly fishing, or what distinguishes it and cold water fisheries or trout experiences from other types of therapeutic modalities? And I believe that there are some things that distinguish it. There are a number of them. And the questions that I'm asking, just so you all know and can track as we move along, and as I may ask you to help partner with me at the chapter level to do some of this work, are these questions here. Does fly fishing encourage independent thinking and behavior? And I'm sure we all have opinions and thoughts about all this. And frankly, I want to let you know that there's a way for us to be expressing those thoughts before I conclude my talk. Taking a break from daily stress. Is it building confidence? Is it creating a sense of accomplishment? Is there something to look forward to, or something pleasurable, and so forth? You see the list of questions. These are the questions I'm asking, but I'm not just asking them sort of stroking my chin and musing about it. I'm developing surveys and developing tools with partnerships among Trout Unlimited chapters and with Rivers of Recovery to be able to answer these questions with more authority and with more data and more scientifically. The thing that I wanted to mention in a wrap up is that we are making progress here. Just recently, the Department of Veterans Affairs announced that they are studying outdoor recreation therapy as a prescribable thing, and they're selecting, or they're soliciting comments from anyone having to do with the therapeutic aspects of things like fly fishing or other outdoor recreation. This is in response to some federal legislation having to do with understanding what barriers and opportunities exist in outdoor recreation for veterans specifically. And it parallels legislation that was passed that Aaron Leonard and I worked on together in New York State, the Outdoor RX Act, which basically required every state agency in New York to identify barriers and opportunities for veterans to be able to experience outdoor recreation. Predominantly, the respondents of that will be the Veterans Administration, Public Health, DEC, and so forth. And fly fishing and outdoor recreation having to do with fishing and cold water figure in prominently. So my ask for you in concluding my talk, and then we can open it up to conversation, questions, what have you. My ask is, I think every chapter president has been sent a note from Larry Charette that describes this VA survey. And my ask would be that if you're at all interested, or if you have any thoughts or belief that fly fishing and cold water fisheries conservation can be therapeutic for veterans, I would ask you to go to that website and fill in that information. You don't have to fill out the whole thing, just make your voice heard. It's so important for us to make sure that the VA understands and recognizes the therapeutic aspects of this. And with that, I want to again thank you, Gordon, and thank all of you for the time tonight. And I again want to express my appreciation for your chapter in particular, leading the way in so many ways. And I'm looking forward to getting on some of your streams here as soon as the weather breaks. And that's all I have, and I'll stop sharing my screen. And Gordon, it's up to you how you want to proceed with Q&A or what have you.
Yeah, if anyone has any questions, I would just jump in, or if you want to write them in the chat. I did get that. I think you sent that email the other day. I was just looking on at my phone.
Yeah,
there.
just a few days ago, right?
Okay. Yeah, there it is. So
yeah, I mean, I think that in particular, the group assembled here apparently has some interest in this space, and maybe some experience with Project Healing Waters or others. That experience and your observations are crucial for the VA to hear.
Well, I see.
Hey,
Will
Keith, I'd just like to thank you for what you're doing. That's a great program you're looking at and a great goal. You know, personally, I think all of us on the screen here think fly fishing is therapeutic. To me, a couple of the big things is, you know, just that, and you kind of alluded to some of this early on, you know, that repetitive rhythmic motion. And I think, you know, the super high level of focus you have on kind of what you're doing. And, you know, just the fact that when you're out there fly fishing, you're in a beautiful, most time you're in a beautiful environment. You know, I think
Yeah,
those are kind of three biggies as far as I'm concerned.
absolutely. Well, Al, I appreciate those comments. And by any chance, are you related to Albert Cross of L.C. Smith engraving fame?
Not that I know of, but I'll tell you, I have worked with Oasis here in Bristol Mountain. So I've set up a couple of fly fishing trips, and so there's
Yep.
a lot of good programs out there. We just need to work together and keep moving forward.
And to that end, the Veteran Service Partnership in New York, you know, it's kind of a new idea at national to have a state coordinator, and now they don't have a national coordinator. So
Oh.
I'm going to try to pick up the slack to the extent that I can in New York anyway, and make sure that we're doing, as you say, Al, we're keeping track of what the opportunities are. We're not being redundant. We're using our various experiences and talents to reach out to as many veterans and other service providers that we can.
Sounds good.
Now, Keith, if we wanted to like volunteer to, you know, take a veteran or a first responder fishing sometimes, is there a, you know, a process to do that through TU or Rivers of Recovery, or what's the?
You know, any of us can, you know, just decide we want to take out a veteran anytime we want. I mean, that is encouraged, and there's no reason why we can't do that. But when we invoke it as a Trout Unlimited event, one of the benefits of working with one of these other partner organizations like Rivers of Recovery or Project Healing Waters, or Ryan's starting one up, one of the benefits of doing that is that, number one, they generally have trained volunteers. We are increasingly looking for people to have some training in how you interact with veterans, especially combat veterans. It's important. And the second thing you benefit from is insurance, because you're taking out somebody to a water environment. And so you get the double benefit when you partner with these organizations, especially those that have entered into the Trout Unlimited Service Partnership and are vetted. And so that would be the thing to consider. So if you were deciding, yeah, our chapter would like to run one of these, and basically you would just work with me as the state service partnership guy. And if you had an organization you already knew that you wanted to work with, we connect that all up, design the trip, see how your funding is, see what needs to be done in terms of timing and advertising and recruiting veterans, and off we go.
Okay.
I find, you know, just the working with Oasis, you know, they do fly fishing, we do skiing. Your biggest issue is identifying candidates to be parts of the program. So that's something somehow if we could wrap our hands around, I think that's the biggest issue with the whole thing.
What we're doing at the national level, that's a good point, Al. What we're doing at the national level is they used to call these warrior transition units. They got a new name for them now, but when people come out of the military, there's a out processing cycle that they go through. And part of what morale, welfare, and recreation groups in the military do is now, because they have databases and so forth, they get lists of people who say on their way out the door, I'd like to go hunting, or I'd like to go fishing more, or whatever. And then those lists are pushed towards organizations that the Department of Defense and the VA know do this stuff. And Trout Unlimited's Veteran Service Partnership is one of them. So from national, I will sometimes get sent lists like, here's 3 people that are in New York. We need to get them hooked up with a chapter, and we need to get them involved in one of these activities.
Yeah.
An example of that is there's an activity coming up that we're recruiting. And you're right, Al, it's hard to get recruits sometimes. We're recruiting for this West Branch of the Delaware River event that's coming up this spring. It's a couples outing. And I've asked around on that, and I've only got a handful of interest on that. So if you know a couple that are veteran, one of the members of the couple is a veteran, that trip is being solicited or canvassed right now.
So I don't know a couple right now, but I'd be glad to help guide that if you need a guide, because I fish the West Branch all the time.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind. Other comments or questions I can answer while you got me?
I would, this may not be the appropriate venue for it, but if you'd have some time in the next couple of weeks, I'd love to sit down with you. We kind of have a little bit of a prevailing, I wouldn't call it a theory yet, but an informed observation as to how we've been approaching why fly fishing works. And I thought I might run it by you, just run it by your expertise. But I will say this, I can tell you absolutely it's therapeutic. I don't think fly fishing is the only one, but I think it's one of the few that actually meets the criteria that would make it a therapeutic thing. And like I said, I think one of the best things we can probably do is if we could ever target the folks before they need it, give it to currently serving first responders that are experiencing that kind of traumatic and cumulative stress. Giving it to military folks, before they're on their way out the door, it might be a protective factor that gives them a chance to maybe recover while they're still in service before they have, I'd call it permanent damage done. Not that we can prevent PTSD necessarily, but if we could find ways of, like I said, like you said, making this a prophylactic and giving military folks and their families the ability to connect and have a sense of something they can affect their own recovery when they're going through crisis before it becomes PTSD. So again, if we could talk about that, I would love to do that. If you don't mind, if I could share some contact information with you.
No, absolutely. I think actually I see Scott now. I think he and I were chatting back and forth on Facebook or some social media platform earlier today. And we can definitely do that, Ryan. We'll look forward to catching up with you more. Hi,
Appreciate
Scott.
that.
Hey, guys. Great talk, Keith.
Scott?
Hey there. I'm right in the middle of dinner. Sorry, guys. I've been multitasking today. I had a couple meetings going on. I've been clicking in and out of Zoom conferences all night here, but that was a great talk, Keith. Really informative. And anything I can do to help in any way, as we've talked before, I'd be glad to be a part of it to help these veterans in any way I can.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. And this chapter was helpful when we were recruiting for that trip that I shared earlier in the talk. And Scott, you and the social media were helpful on that. So, appreciate that. And there'll be more of these trips as we go forward. I'm trying to draw resources from Rivers of Recovery, from Quiet Waters, and from Project Healing Waters. One thing that I didn't say in the talk that I think is important, Project Healing Waters is a super duper awesome organization. They have a recipe that they use. It involves being at the VA or working with the VA, and it involves some very discreetly bounded sort of activities that are helpful and therapeutic. And I think the recipe works. What they don't do as much of, they don't do these outings. They don't do 3 to 5 day outings where all that camaraderie and all those other sort of magic ingredients are happening out on the stream. With, the Rivers of Recovery program is interesting in that there are certified recreation therapists. That's an actual career. That's a real field. And the certified recreation therapists are involved in the planning and execution of these Rivers of Recovery multi-day outings. So that is a distinguishing factor, and Rivers of Recovery is anxious to do more work in the state of New York. So we have those opportunities out in front of us.
Well, something to keep in mind, Keith, since we are TU, one of the things we've done is we've gotten some people at the VA involved in some of our conservation projects. So that's kind of therapeutic too, talking about achieving something, getting out, working with others, and having something to be proud of. I think, that could kind of go hand in hand with, the fly fishing piece. We're really conservationists too. So keep that in your back pocket too.
I absolutely agree with. I can't agree with you more. There's a chapter I wrote in a outdoor recreation edited volume recently having to do with exactly that. And I should probably share a link to where you can read that chapter if you're interested. But the idea is military folks want task and purpose. And, fly fishing is a gateway to caring about benthic invertebrates, and then caring about the streams that benthic invertebrates live in, and then recognizing that there's a mission, which is this stream bed is ruined or the banks are eroded or what have you. So the stepwise process of being fully reintegrated into natural ecological systems as humans via fly fishing through conservation activities is, in my mind, that's the nirvana. That's the ultimate objective for these
Yeah.
programs. So I'm right there with you. And if you're interested in that chapter, I'd be happy to share that out.
So
Okay.
Keith, my name's Will Faber, and I've been involved with Project Healing Waters through this chapter for probably, I don't know, 12, 15 years. Project Healing Waters has a very prescriptive, as you noted. The veterans have to have a certain amount of disability. It has to be verified through the VA. And quite frankly, it's a royal pain in the ass.
Yep.
The easiest thing to do is allow the recreational therapists to gather the people for you. And that's why we've worked through the Canandaigua VA. I don't want to know what the disability is of these guys. I have no interest in asking them. And so this is our way of sidestepping that, and it's a requirement because Project Healing Waters gets a tremendous amount of money from the Department of Defense, the Department of Veterans Affairs. So we've tried to work with people in the community, and the difficulty is, even if you're contacted by a veteran in the community, you know, it comes around to the difficult conversation is, you know, do you have enough of a disability to go on one of these trips? And they do have the week-long trips. It's just, you have to submit an application through national. And, you know, everybody who goes on those trips, just about, is missing a limb that they lost in combat. I mean, if you have PTSD, that's nothing compared to what some of these guys have. And I know some people who have gone on them with PTSD, but they were also like regional or state managers of Project Healing Waters. They weren't, you know, run-of-the-mill guys that you find at the VA. So that's something that we've been beating our heads against the wall for a long time. And after a while, we just gave up and went right through the recreational therapists at the VA to come up with the people. And the guys we work with are only there at most 3 months. So we're lucky if we see them 3 times with a monthly meeting. And then we have a picnic in June that a lot of the people here have been on. And we get a whole busload of them that we've never met before. And we take them out and we have a picnic and we teach them how to fly cast and we catch sunfish in a pond and they have a ball. I mean, it's not that we're not doing good, but it's extremely restrictive as to who we can get to go out on these things. And consequently, no one goes.
Right.
I mean, it's so restrictive and it's so difficult to find vets in the community who meet the criteria that, you know, after a while you just give up because.
Well, to that point, and I appreciate that very much. And I spent a long time working with Project Healing Waters at the beginning of this about 10 years ago. And I have great respect for the organization and their recipe. But as you say, it's a very, very strict kind of recipe. And the VA is the challenge. So what Rivers of Recovery and a couple of the other organizations do to get around that, and what I'm encouraging chapters to do to augment their relationship, not supplement or replace, but augment their relationship with Project Healing Waters, is use your county veterans person. There's a veterans person in every county. If that person knows that the Trout Unlimited chapter locally is connected to, through the Veteran Service Partnership, connected to a handful of half a dozen outings-oriented fly fishing groups, and that a veteran in X county, let's say Canandaigua over there, and it's Ontario County, right? So in Ontario County, if there was a veteran or two that wanted to do that, they could be connected through your chapter to Veteran Service Partnership state and be let know what are the trips that are available. And if you have 3 or more that you've accumulated, then you just ask me, which of these organizations would be willing to come run a trip around here on one of our waters? And we start working that problem out, going straight around. These other organizations besides Project Healing Waters don't want to see the medical records of the participant. All they need to see is a DD 214 to make sure that you actually served. From there on out, it's on your honor. They're veterans. They don't need a percentage of disability or whatever to participate. We all benefit from the therapeutic aspects of this activity. So it's a way around that. And hopefully, this chapter and others can utilize that. I again, do not want to, sell short Project Healing Waters. They do great work, but it is hard and it doesn't work in every situation to be able to get guys or gals in the field, fishing. Fishing for trout on trout streams.
So if we find veterans and we know that they're veterans and that they served, that's basically the only criteria we need to start putting together or connecting them to some of these organizations.
That's correct. I mean, if it's a Atlantic salmon trip or a musky fly fishing trip with wounded warriors in action, it'll be one more layer. They'll need to have a Purple Heart, an award that says they were wounded in combat, but no, there's no disability, anything, anywhere in any of it. Just, did they serve? Did they, do they feel like they could benefit from the therapeutic aspects of this activity? If both of those are yes, let's go on a trip.
And if I can offer something else with that too, as you guys are talking about this, I think some folks that get overlooked a lot, and I'll bring this back to the first responders. When we have people like police officers and firefighters that frankly go through a lot of trauma and cumulative stress as well, might want to consider, if you're looking for folks to take out that are deserving of it, those guys are going through it. They may not have Purple Hearts, but I mean, if you consider the stuff they've been through, a lot of them have frankly the same symptoms of post-traumatic stress or going cumulative stress, all those things like that. If you can find, and there are starting to have some smaller organizations pop up that are helping police officers and all that do that. One of the things I've kind of found with running bold-faced fly fishing is that military veterans, currently serving ones, and police officers, we all talk the same language. We tell the same stories. We have the same kind of mentalities, and we find the same we connect with fly fishing a lot of times in very similar ways. And like I said, I can talk more about that later, but if there's ways, just a suggestion for you guys is don't just limit it to military veterans. I mean, if you have someone that's cops, firefighters, odds are there's a decent chance they may have been former military anyways, but consider those kind of people. They're great to help connect with veterans. A lot of them are connected with the veteran community already. So just a thought for you guys, put them in the same river with each other, and odds are they'll become friends by the day is over.
Yeah, I think you might have missed the first part of the talk there, Ryan, where we talked about how what was called the Trout Unlimited Veteran Service Partnership is now the Trout Unlimited Service Partnership and has been opened up to first responders.
Sorry about that.
We're tracking that. The challenge though is in the chapters is, that briefs well, but it doesn't get the same level of traction often that people patriotic instincts do when it comes to the veteran work. So we're at national, that's still an open question as how we actually, there aren't a lot of work. Like I just showed half a dozen organizations working with veterans in fly fishing on one of the early slides. There aren't that many working in fly fishing yet in the rest of the first responder community. But like you say, there are starting to be some, and we'll continue to grow that part of the service partnership portfolio as we move along.
So you consider first responder, not just police and fire, but also medical personnel?
Absolutely.
I mean, just think what they've gone through the past 2 years. I mean, someone who's like an ICU nurse, I mean, talk about being on the front lines of a war. I mean, they really experienced and in addition to the stress of their jobs day after day after day. I mean, a lot of times they're abused, by, wackos outside a hospital, protesting and things like that. So that's.
I think there's a chapter over, Orange County, New York City, somewhere over that way that is actually going to be doing a trip this summer for medical staff that were in some of those super crowded hospitals when the whole COVID thing went down crazy. in the initial weeks and months. So you're absolutely right. And that's an opportunity for all the chapters to consider is, if you want to continue to share the passion of fly fishing and cold water conservation, we can certainly reach out into those communities. Now, I don't have a ton of expertise in that space, but I'm willing to learn, and I'd love to work with the chapter to do one of those trips.
Hell, my wife's a medical director at a nursing home through this COVID pandemic. I'd like to take the whole freaking staff of St. John's Nursing Home in Rochester, take them fly fishing. They talk about PTSD. Jeez.
Well, we can fundraise towards something like that and run an event. I mean, I'm the other thing I'm supposed to tell you at the end of this talk, according to Larry, is that you're, use me, figure out what kind of a event you want to have, and I will come in right alongside you, and so will the rest of the council to support it.
Hey, this is John Sheldon. So that's a good question about raising funds for an event like that. Like what's a typical cost for a small group, and like what's the on ramp to like planning it to actually getting there? Is it like weeks, months? What typically do you see from a time frame standpoint? If we wanted to do that, we'd have to plan for it and time it right so that it's doable, right? So what does that look like?
If you, the numbers that we use for veterans trips, and we can probably extrapolate that to other other first responders, it's about $1,500 a person. And that usually includes lodging, food, equipment rental, guides fees, and a small transportation reimbursement. If the program is done more locally, for example, your local hospital where you don't have a big travel expense, then that can be brought down. And if Trout Unlimited chapter members are going to be guides, then you reduce a huge cost. The guides cost is one of the big costs, the per day guide costs. Now with Hungry Trout, Evan's a good friend of mine. We fish together a lot. We do a lot of other things together. He gave me a number of good discounts on lodging and food, and a little bit of a discount on the guides, although the guides got to make a living if they're out there. So it's case by case, but the number that when we fundraise for any number of these organizations, it's $1,500 a person. Time-wise for planning, you could probably get enough of a plan together to host something towards the end of summer this year, but usually I'm planning a year out for these kinds of events.
Do you guys ever have any that do like one-on-one trips? And somebody kind of mentioned is taking somebody fly fishing is what they want to do. Like not a massive big event, somebody that has a spare fly rod and goes out with a veteran that just wants to do that. Is there anything preventing TU chapters and all that from just taking somebody out fishing on their own? I mean,
nothing prevents that. In fact, there's an inducement that I forgot to mention that I should mention in case you're not aware of it. Trout Unlimited encourages Trout Unlimited members to take out a veteran fishing, and there's a free veterans membership. So, if you say, hey, I'm a veteran, you're a veteran, have you ever fly fished? No, or a little, let's go together. We go. When we're done, if they've had a good time, they're interested, we hope. And then I just get their information and send in on the website that that's a veteran or a first responder, and they get a free 1-year membership to Trout Unlimited. Includes the magazine, the whole bit. And that's true for any veteran. They don't have to have gone on a trip. If any of you know a veteran that you think that might be interested in this and you want to help them get involved in TU, you go onto the veteran service, or now the service partnership, TU service partnership website, and look for membership. There is the fill-in form right there to get a veteran a free, or a first responder a free 1-year membership.
Keith, this is Scott. I'm surprised to hear that the guides are charging, or that there's some sort of monetary exchange for service with the guides in this program or others related to it. As a guide myself, I donate my time free to boldface fly fishing, and I donate my time free to really any veterans or people that come outside of this program that I'm involved with, or others, just because I feel as though it's the right thing to do, right? And
about
just so
50%, about 50% of the guides and the trips, and I've been on literally hundreds of these now. Yeah, about half are entirely donating the trip. Their guiding services and so forth. And the other half, they're still, they they got a staff of 6 guys, you know, the leader of the guiding group is donating all kinds of stuff, but he's still got to pay his guides.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
about 50-50.
Well, just so you know, I don't operate that way. If you need support in any way, I come free.
There you go, man. Appreciate that. Thank you.
That's how I work. So with any veteran, and you know, frankly, I was going to say that this we've touched on it throughout the conversation this evening, where you know it's not just vets or ENT or first responder. It's all of us. It's every day and everybody and everybody's life, and we all have stress to varying levels, and we all learn to deal with it in different ways. But the therapeutics of this sport are fascinating for good results, as you've pointed out to so aptly through the program tonight. But yeah, I think that a lot of my clients come to me, and some of them don't even realize why they want to catch a fish, but deep down, when I start to work with them, I can see that they're there for other reasons, and it's apparent if you're astute with this reading people in that way. And I was a salesman for 30 years, so I read people pretty well. And as soon as I get on the water with a lot of these folks, sure, they want to catch a fish or better their cast or maybe learn a spot, that kind of thing. But I can also see a lot of them are really looking to get away from the stress of their daily corporate grind, or maybe stress at home, or some other triggers that are in their daily participation. So it's fascinating that this really is. There's so many clients, and we've all touched on this as well throughout the talk, that there's so many people that we could reach that need this, that could benefit from this in any way, whether it's tying a fly, learning to cast, doing it all, pieces of it, fractions of it, all of it. And the challenge for all of us, I think, is really moving forward and trying to find a way to net these people and bring them into the fray. And whether it's through the Wounded Warrior Project, which has got a lot of stringent criteria, or whether it's through just a TU guy meeting up with a TU guy and taking out a vet for free. It's at the end of the day, finding ways to bring people in, capture them, whether it's through your program, through Boldface, through just a guide like myself trying to connect with another person that's dealing with stress in their life. It could be expanded, right? I mean, it's just such a wonderful thing, and there's so much opportunity. The biggest challenge is that, trying to get people involved, get them to come into this in some way. And any creative ideas you have, I'm all ears, and any way we can all work together to try to find betterment in that way is productive and something important to me.
Well, I appreciate that, Scott. And I think, the main message from where I sit, my foxhole, as we say, with Trout Unlimited Council, is that service partnership is a partnership. We have 5 or 6, maybe 7 if Boldface becomes a member of the partnership. Organizations that are already have done the handshake with Trout Unlimited to do this work, and we just need to, at the chapter level, catch the spark, catch the fever, as you're talking about, and recruit towards it, and recognize that you just need a couple of fired up people, and I'm one of them, and Scott seems to be one of them, and I think there's a bunch of other ones here thinking about becoming pretty fired up about this again, as you were when I know y'all put a lot of effort and time into that Project Healing Waters work and the challenges there. I've heard from other groups, so I understand that, and we've gotten other pathways now in Trout Unlimited to feel good about this work and to provide that task and purpose if you all desire, and that's what I'm here to do.
Okay. Any other questions tonight, or? I had one more. I remember getting in with Project Healing Waters. They hooked us up to a training program called Psych Armor. Are you familiar with that?
We use that.
Oh, okay. So
that's across the board with the service partnership. Trout Unlimited actually, I think, funded a couple more of those, and the one in particular, Gordon, was it the how to talk to a service member?
Yeah, it's basically a series of like online kind of training things. It's like corporate training kind of things online. Slideshows. But yeah, that was one of the first ones, is how to communicate to a veteran, especially if you're not one. What to ask and not say, and that kind of stuff there.
Yeah, that Psych Armor program is excellent, and to that point, another one of the hats that I wear, I'm the vice president of the New York State Conservation Council, which represents all the sportsmen's clubs in the state of New York, and other organizations that are involved hunting, fishing, trapping, forestry, wildlife, etc. And one of the things that the organization exists to do is to put forward recommendations for regulations and legislation having to do with that space. One thing that was passed as a resolution that I was involved in pushing forward was for DEC to add a block and a specialization to their New York State Guides program that would be for guiding veteran trips, service member and veteran trips, because the Psych Armor program already exists and a couple of other pieces we've developed at Cornell. All we would need DEC to do would be to package it and offer it when you get your guides license for fishing. You could actually click that, take that online training, and then you'd be certified. You don't have to have the certification to do it, but it would provide you a certification to be able to guide in the veterans context based on the Psych Armor training and a couple of other modules we built at Cornell. So that hasn't come to fruition yet, but it's out there.
Okay, good. All right. Anyone else have any questions for Keith before we wrap up tonight?
How do I get in touch with you directly, Keith?
Scott knows.
Okay.
I got it.
I'm going to put my email in the chat, but for everybody, but definitely Scott knows how to get a hold of me anytime. Here comes my email in the chat.
Scott
Hey,
does that a lot.
Keith, do you can you send me those clinical studies that you had?
Yeah, I appreciate that.
What I did is I sent Gordon the entire
Hey, did I lose
slideshow.
you guys? Hold on.
I sent Gordon the whole slide deck, and
Yeah.
Gordon, you're welcome to distribute that as widely as you're comfortable.
Okay,
Whoever wants it.
sounds good. I could just forward that to you, Scott. So,
Thank you.
Well, thank you for all your efforts and thanks for joining us tonight, Keith.
I appreciate the invitation very much, and again, I appreciate what you guys are doing, and I love fishing over down towards Bath because I like to visit the cemetery there and then do some fishing and some other things. So I'm sure I'll see some of you around.
yeah, that's our home water. That's basically our responsibility now in our territory is that whole Catoctin
Yep.
river
Great
there.
water.
Yeah, we're not that
Great
far
water.
away from each other, so definitely. I think one of the good things I've noticed with TU this year is more of a kind of instead of kind of chapters being kind of off in their own little universes here, but more of a statewide effort to get folks together. Because you think about it, I mean, we're an hour away from a little more than that from the Ithaca area where you are, so it's
Right.
we're all in the same neck of the woods here. So
I'm actually my home chapter is the Finger Lakes chapter up in Seneca Falls.
oh, okay, you're even closer there.
And
then,
so, I'm a member of the Awaka Creek gang over there, that fishing game club and so forth. So I'm in the neighborhood. I'd love to connect with you guys.
all right, great. All right, well, with that, let's wrap the meeting up, and thanks everyone for attending. We're gonna as soon as I wrap up, I'll stop the recording of this, and well, by tomorrow we'll actually have a link, so folks that couldn't make it, because I think it was a really good talk we had tonight, we'll be able to watch the replay of it later.
I appreciate that. Thanks very much. I look forward to the YouTube link so I can show my daughters.
Okay, thanks a lot.
Take care,
Thanks,
guys.
Keith.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Hey, guys.
Good night.